So moving on to probably a much better story, to where you see, students, college students, actually stepping up and demanding change from their institution. And after reading the story just a couple times, again, really impressed with the student body of the Georgetown University. So just to kind of give you guys a background, Georgetown University students in Washington, D.C. Have voted in favor of reparations fund to repay the descendants of slaves sold by the school in 1838. So just so you guys get an idea, this school is basically it's a former Jesuit. It was a former Jesuit institution, and basically, right now there's a creation of a reconciliation contribution fee of $27.20 each semester, would benefit descendants of the 272 slaves. Or the descendants of the slaves that were sold those many years ago. So the undergraduate students passed a referendum with a 66% majority, but the measure still requires approval by the university, and Georgetown is the first major college to pass such a reparations fund. And right now there's a lot of talk about reparations, especially amongst the Democratic candidates, most notably Tulsi Gabbard, who was proposing a reparations fund bill or refund bill or like something like.
I don't know the details of that particular bill,
but it's interesting right now that this is happening, and I think this is a really interesting step that these students are willing to take in regards to acknowledge something that was really horrific that happened at their school in 1838, and was a continued practice until the end of slavery after the Civil War. And the descendants of the 272 enslaved people, I mean, at least they're getting something back. And you're seeing students who have no relations with the people at the university or any other relations at all actually coming together and voting on a correct historical issue. So I kind of want to open the floor with you guys. I want to get your thoughts and comments about the courage that these students have done, and really what does it say about other college universities too, and whether or not they'll do the same, and how much an issue this will play in regards to the 2020 presidential election cycle.
So I think that I'm going to really stick on that last point you made about the 2020, because the last time we brought up reparations was when we were talking about how the media is attacking Sanders for this perceived weakness on reparations. Sanders, when you ask Sanders what do you do about reparations, he's going to say, well, all these programs that I've made, we're going to have extra funds put to low-income minority locations, but we're going to rising tide lifts all boats. A mentality where it's like, okay, well, your reparation is now you get health care, now you get free college, now you get all these other things that everyone else gets, and that was being used to attack him by many other more established candidates who would say, I'm for reparations, but never defined it. And again, our video from that time was saying how if you don't define what reparations are, you're not saying anything. You're just taking a political advantage on a very, 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 very sad historic issue and playing a game with it because you don't really mean it. And so no one brought anything specific. So back then we were talking about how if you don't bring anything specific, it doesn't matter. This is specific. Right. These are students coming together, the student government, and saying, here's a problem, here are the people that we're targeting to fix it, here's why it's related to this college, here's how we're going to pay for it, here's who we're going to pay, and here's how we're going to do this. This is specific reparations, and I'm very happy that they did this, and I do hope that the university takes advantage of this and doesn't turn this down, because if the university was to, after all this happened, after reporting the story, say that we're not going to deal with it because it's too X, Y, or Z, didn't want to.
Well, I actually got a comment on it because there was two parts of the article that I forgot to mention, but in order to bring some historical context, just so you guys have an idea about where the university stands and what happened when it sold those 272 slaves during its founding. So in 1838, the Jesuit university decided to sell slaves to plantations in Louisiana to pay off debts in a deal worth the equivalent of $3.3 million. So, I mean, again, a barbaric way to pay off a debt because those are human lives and individuals. But in 2017, the institution formally apologized for selling the 272 slaves and renamed the campus building after Isaac Hawkins, the first enslaved man listed in the 1838 sale. So, Georgetown University is aware of its past. and they, at least in 2017, they made a formal apology. I think it's really important that the university leaders, the administration, really acknowledges what the student body voted for and that they pass it, because I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, if you're going to sell human beings to pay off debts, I think it's very important, if you're going to keep an educational institute, a free, a college-educated institute that's there to enlighten minds and to educate the next future leaders, you should step up and do the right thing, because reparations is being talked about. Now, there's one thing that's bothering me, though, at the end of this article, because it mentions Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey on Tuesday filed a bill to create a commission for studying reparation proposals, and then Senator Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris also expressed the same kind of study.
Bernie Sanders did as well.
Yeah, but I mean, with Tulsi Gabbard, at least she's actually proposing written bill. I mean, there's a difference, but I mean, like, look, enough with the studying. I think we kind of understand.
I kind of get why you would want to study, because there have been multiple different proposals of how to handle it. What is the right amount of money? Who are the right people to target with some kind of reparations bill? There's a lot of disagreement among how to adequately handle it, even amongst the most vociferous supporters of reparations. So I don't begrudge anyone for launching an investigation or exploratory committee into figuring out how should we do this, what is the best way to move forward with this, what is the way that adequately covers the intended purpose of reparations, and what is the most politically feasible way of getting that through. I don't necessarily begrudge anyone that. With regard to this particular action that this particular institution did, it's rhetorically excellent, right? So it's saying, listen, we are an institution that is aware of our history, is aware of the negative parts of our history, and want to proactively do something to make amends for that.
Right.
That's an excellent, I mean, no one can begrudge them that.
There is though an issue though. So like a lot of the Democratic candidates are either adopting the idea of reparations or proposing a study of reparations, or really full in support of it. And of course, during the primary, each one's going to say, well, I'm better at it. I can do this. Do you think it will carry on into the general election? And what will it do during the general election?
The second it hits the general election, they're going to... That's my entire point, that Sanders at least is coming out and saying, look, I have a plan that's going to fix everyone, and that's what I'm sticking with. Because, again, reparations has a 30% approval rating, so it's a big hot potato issue. And again, to the point, I think that not many people are really that serious about it. I think that they're talking about it now because they're trying to court the African-American vote, and they think that, well, Sanders has these things locked down, so I'm going to do this thing, which happens to be reparations. I don't think they mean anything by it beyond what they're saying in a primary to get votes.
Can I tack on to that point actually as well? In a survey I was reading, and I wish I could cite this for you, I don't know it off the top of my head, but even among African-American voters, reparations only has like a 55% favorable view. So it's not, even amongst the most specific voting bloc that should have the highest opinion of this, it sort of has majority support, but kind of barely. It's not overwhelming.
20% of the population is not enough. But I also want to add into this that the other issue that I brought up last time, which I think is still fair, is the system that we live in is still a white supremacist system. So even if you give people money, a lot of people are going to get screwed out. I mean, again, you go back to after the Civil War, I believe it was like 40,000 acres or some huge amount of Georgia country was given to slaves who were not slaves anymore, who had, I believe, served in the Union Army. I could be wrong on exactly how they got there. And they gave them that land, and they were successfully using it. And then once the federal government was not that interested in dealing with or fighting the South, the state militias just came and burned everything down. You have one of the most prosperous African-American towns in history, which was in Tulsa. The Air Force, well, I don't think they were the Air Force quite then in World War I, would use it as bombing practice. There was, if you're familiar with the Emmett Till story, where a woman who recanted at the end of her life that he never actually whistled, we just killed him for nothing. There was a similar story where a white woman said that she was assaulted by a black man, so they just burned the entire city to the ground. So part of what I'm getting at is reparations are good, but if you can't continue to sustain and build them up, just like people have been able to settle in the suburbs, build up their home values, then they can send their kids to school, which allows them to have more education, which allows them to be more productive, which allows them to get bigger houses, and they can, that's the cycle, that's a cycle that's good, that's positive, that builds up over time. But if, as an example, no one's taken more wealth in terms of who was president than Obama from African Americans, because he was there and presided over the 2008 collapse, which, of course, because of the ninja loans and all these other things,
so many people lost their homes.
Specifically, African Americans lost more value. I think they lost more value compared to whites. That they actually, about 100 years of progress was just wiped out like that because of 2008.
Well, see, that's not the first time either. Because if you even look at the history of Detroit, especially after World War II, there was a lot of thriving African American communities.
Yeah.
And as soon as that was made aware, especially to those in the industry as well as in the state and local politics, federal politicians, there was a lot of crackdown on a lot of the major African American businesses.
We can't solve reparations alone. Will just end in the exact same thing that it's always ended in: someone taking it away at a previous time and no one caring. You have to fix the system that makes it happen, and then when you fix it, you can do money infusion.
That's the point.
So there is actually one final comment I want to state in regards to this story, and it actually comes from the group chat Carvamos. Too bad Isaac Hawkins can't see the black students attending the school that sold him. Perhaps he would have felt less hopeless if he had been able to envision a better future for his descendants. And you know what? That's a fantastic note to end it on. And you know what? The history of slavery is a damning mark on the United States, especially as our revolution was based on the idea of individual freedom, the right to pursue happiness, liberty, and the ability to make a better life for yourself. And for a long time, even after we won our Revolutionary War, we still continued the practice of slavery. And finally now, people are actually talking about, the impact that it had on our culture, and we're having a conversation about reparations.
Well,
and
we've had this conversation in the past.
We've had this conversation in the past, but I don't think it really held as much ground because, again, the system that we had was it's corrupt to the core.
Reparations right now, like I'm saying, is even the people that are saying that they're for it are using it for political purposes.
Yeah. And hopefully, I think we could tell which candidates are really more for it and would actually fight for it. But I mean, when it comes down to really having a political conversation, it's going to require citizens themselves to step up and really act.
Who before this fake attack on this schism, I should say, that's happening with Bernie Sanders, the news has just created of many things that they've created with him. How many people were talking about reparations before they started using it as a weakness? None.
Yeah.
Because the reality is reparations can work if there is also systemic change, right? Reparations on their own is a Band-Aid for a flesh wound.
Yeah, and it's going to get cut again anyway, because again, whenever a community of African Americans in the U.S. get money, something terrible happens to the community.
Just look at the history of Detroit. In fact, there's a fantastic documentary, and it's skipping my mind right now, but it shows really the rise of African American communities in Detroit, especially with the auto industry, and really the amount of pushback that they got, and really what led to the deconstruction of Detroit. I mean, there's a lot of other factors happened, but I mean, the main communities that were affected the most by politicians really trying to cripple African American communities and small business owners, it was in Detroit, and they were really going after a lot of African American communities.
And again, I want to say again, the only place in America that got bombed in World War I was the U.S. bombing an African-American city, Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was known back then as Black Wall Street. It was the most successful, one of the most successful communities in the country.
There were small business owners. There were thriving community leaders.
A dollar would circulate 100 times before it would leave, whereas now, and this actually was very funny, that's connecting to Killer Mike and his thing on Netflix.
Oh, by the way, watch that documentary.
It's very good.
It's like 6 cents now.
It's like no, it's not even 6 cents. It's that a dollar will stay in the African American community for like 30 minutes or something.
It's a time. It's a measure of time. Yeah.
It's how long it stays there. Because if it circulates, it can continue to rebound. But that's what I'm saying. You can't fix one if you can't fix the system. If a machine is broken fundamentally by design, throwing time and elbow grease isn't going to fix it. You have to make a new machine.
Yeah. And that's the only way, again, people are going to have that better future is if we get involved. We got to have conversations. We've got to get politically involved in the system. The system won't change unless we step up and fight for a better future. And hey, did you like that video? Well, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell notification, hit that thumbs up icon, so that way you know when we upload more content to the Hardlands Media YouTube channel. So Daniel, what else can we do to really put everything into this?
Well, we've invested everything we have into this company, so you can help us out by going to our Patreon page and giving us the equivalent of going to Starbucks once a day, which I think is about $50. Please help us out. We want to build more and grow. We will see you in the next video.